Good evening, and welcome to my colleagues on the council, town staff, members of the public who are here in person or on the live stream. Welcome to this special meeting of the East Greenwich Town Council for Monday, May 4th. Call the meeting to order, and we'll have our town clerk, Lee Carney, lead us in the pledge.
And flag, public for which it stands.
Thank you, Lee. Joining me on the dais is Town Council Vice President Michael Donegan. I'm Mark Schwager. Also here is Councilor Karen Kornthal, Councilor Renu Engelhardt, and Councilor Michael Zarella. Our first item on the agenda tonight, reports and presentations. Item 2A is an update on the school construction project. We have representatives of the project team here tonight, left field. And we also have other members of the working group for the school construction, Town Manager Andrew Nada and Director of Finance Patricia Sunderland. A little bit of background. Our school master facilities project is now well underway in the construction phase. And on March 30th, the school district and town held a ceremonial groundbreaking at East Greenwich High School. This milestone provides a timely opportunity for the council and the community to receive a status update on the project. So I'd like to welcome back to Town Hall, a place where she's been many times before, Kate Turner, a Senior Project Manager at Left Field, to begin our discussion. Good evening.
Good evening. Thank you for having me tonight. We're very excited to give an update to you guys. For anybody who's driven by the project sites lately, it is pretty miraculous. Trying to get all the other things out of the way here. All right. So first thing, I wanted to just give a visual guide of where we are in our schedule. To the left of us is mostly the design and bidding phase. These 3 blue bars that you can see right here, this is our overall construction duration. Every time I come in front of you, you'll be able to see that red line start to move. So you can see we're, not even quite 25% of the way, but once you see some of the photos, it's still pretty impressive being early in the project, how much progress you're able to see. So our next celebration that we have in front of us after we've gone through our groundbreaking ceremony is going to be our topping out ceremony. This is a ceremony that is steeped in tradition going back over 1,000 years, where the ceremonial last piece of the building gets put up. There is a celebration. So in modern day, it is the last piece of steel that gets raised up onto the building. And kind of the way that we celebrate it in a modern fashion now, we paint the last beam white. Students can come and sign it. We invite the council to come and sign it. And then everybody gets together to watch it get hoisted up in place and secured onto the building. So there's a very exciting next milestone in our project. Since our groundbreaking was at the high school and it was really more of a mature event focused on the involvement with high school students, we wanted to take an opportunity to involve the younger students in celebrating these construction projects. So we've come up with a Touch a Truck event to coincide with this beam raising topping out ceremony. So we will be bringing some of the construction vehicles and equipment out of the construction site for the students to be able to climb in and explore and experience and chat with some of the workers that are building their school. And there'll be other events there. The PTG is involved in getting some other events. There'll be ice cream trucks and face painting and temporary tattoos. So we are going to do 2 separate events to celebrate each of the new elementary schools. Hannaford is going to be on May 30th, and French Towns is going to be at June 6th. We do invite everybody to attend either or both. For Hannaford and Frenchtown students will, get the invite from their principals. The Eldridge and Meadowbrook students are invited to attend either, whichever is most convenient for their schedule or closest to their home. The event will be from 10 a.m. to noon, and we will have a sensory-friendly start at 9:30 before there is quite a bit of commotion for those that are sensitive. So the most exciting part of this presentation is going to be the updated drone footage. For anybody that tuned in to the school committee update that we gave probably a month ago, this is a very different update from that one. So this will go through all 3 schools. So I'll just pause for a moment. Footage. No. So this is the life skills edition at the East Greenwich High School. This is going to house the new life skills program. It's almost, there's some classroom settings. It's almost like apartment living where they'll be able to learn skills to help them be self-sufficient and independent as they go on to the next journey in their lives. So at this point, this footage was taken on the 30th. Whoops. Of March. So at this point, we have steel decking up. We have concrete slabs that have been poured here. We are getting ready to pour our slab on grade after our under slab utilities. So our electric and water have been brought into the building, and we're getting ready to pour concrete on that bottom level. Last part you'll be able to see is the beam at the high school that the life skills students were able to sign. A little bit of a lag on your end, I apologize. We'll be able to do that on a larger scale with the elementary schools. Hannaford is a touch further along. You will see in our photo updates, since this footage was taken just 2.5 weeks ago, we have since started erecting steel. So we have some photos of that. And we do that whole back portion of the building now has been erected as we continue moving forward to the other side.
Are we doing solar on the roofs?
So the buildings are solar ready, meaning that they at any point can receive solar. So there's a vertical chase down the center of the building that goes into our electrical room. And solar can be pursued after the project is completed. So there's a lot of different ways that we can explore adding solar panels.
Was that a financial decision not to do that? What was the reason that we didn't do that?
Yeah, so Karen, we went out to a bid, the schools in the town, and what we're buying is renewable energy. That's what we're getting. And, but at any point, should our needs increase, or it be economically, we're locked into a contract, but should our needs increase, we could always consider that. But that's usually kind of a typical significant cash outlay for a payback over time. And we're in the middle of a lot of cash outlays right now.
Yeah, so our other option is if it's solar ready, someday if the market changes a little bit, becomes a little more attractive, we could lease the space out and take the money. So to supplement the school department or whatever it might involve. So that's clearly another option other than kind of backstopping the agreements that we already have in place. But initially, Karen, totally cost. I mean, for the town to buy into that and build it out would have been a staggering cost on top of the school construction cost. Yep.
We're seeing costs in the 7 figures for buildings similar in size. So I'm sorry. Yes, the cost for solar for a building of these size would be buildings of these size would be well over $1 million for just the panels themselves. But the structural infrastructure is there to be able to support the additional load as well as the electrical infrastructure to be able to run solar in the future. So we're future-proofing the building to be able to have that flexibility. All right, so I'll walk you quickly through each project individually, just some of the specific activities. This is the primary work zone where we have the new addition. That new addition will be open at the end of for fall of this year. And so that work is ongoing. This is the construction fencing area and access. It's really, I think, been very successful to limiting disruption of the way that the overall school is working. They have also, in the last 2 months, moved inside, currently working on the auditorium, locker rooms, and they are getting ready to start doing some renovation work in the upper gym. So as I mentioned, with the Life Skills Edition, which is the most visible change we have going on right now, installation of steel decking is complete. We are backfilling the underground utilities in the addition footprint. So that's, again, data, electrical, and plumbing. And we are getting prepared for the slab on grade and upper roof equipment pads. So in the auditorium, all of the old seating, for anybody that has sat in there and sunk down drastically as I have done, all of that is gone. We will be replacing all of that seating, and they are starting layouts for the new mechanical equipment, so that space will be air conditioned going forward. The locker rooms have been completely demolished on the interior so to set us up for that great new layout that really improves circulation to the gymnasium areas and to make much more functional locker rooms for the students. So that interior demolition is complete. It's really amazing how quickly they were able to do that and get all of that concrete and old tile and piping out of there. There's minimal amount of abatement work that'll need to happen with some pipe insulation, but not too bad. They do need to separate the mechanical, electrical, and plumbing systems from the rest of the building. So they are doing some after-hours work to do that, to bifurcate those two spaces so that they can get all of that infrastructure in without disrupting interruption to the rest of the school. It is pretty surgical the way that they need to work in some of those interior spaces and avoid disruption. And they are preparing for some of the underground utilities in that new layout. The locker room layouts are changing, so plumbing needs to change. They need to do some trenching on the interior of the building to get water to those new spaces. And then the upper gymnasium, that will be taken over the summer, but they are finalizing all of the paint colors, gym wall padding, and all of those finishes that are going to be in that space.
Are we doing anything with the bathrooms in the high school?
Not the bathrooms in the remainder of the building, just in the areas that we're touching within the locker rooms.
So there's bathrooms in the locker rooms. Those are the ones. Okay.
Yes, yeah, there will be new bathroom facilities in the locker room. And this photo to the left used to be your locker rooms and now is completely cleared out.
Hey, what is the MEP? It mentions that we're going to separate the MEP from the rest of the project, the prior slide.
During construction, they'll eventually reconnect everything.
What does that stand for?
Mechanical, electrical, and plumbing. I apologize. This photo to the right, this is the auditorium with everything taken out of it. And then just some close-up photos of this new Life Skills Edition. This is some of that under slab piping. This is some plumbing lines. This is that roof deck. And then all the way onto the right, you can see the connection between the existing building and the new building and where those corridors will be into the new Life Skills Edition. Frenchtown, you can see here, foundations, we're about 85% complete with foundations over at Frenchtown. From the drone photos that you saw, we did have quite a bit of excess soil that needed to be removed from the site. So for anybody that drove by and saw that enormous mountain of soil, Consigli and their site contractor, Di Gregorio, worked exhaustively to be able to remove all of that soil. It was about 25,000 cubic yards of additional material that needed to be hauled off site. So that was quite a Herculean effort. They were able to get all of that out. Now it is out of the way of the foundation and they're able to continue in closing that foundation.
Hey,
Steel.
how did the soil go? How did the soil test and where is it going?
So Di Gregorio is taking control of that soil and they'll be processing it and reusing it on other projects that they'll do in the future.
Was it tested? Does it meet residential standards? Do you know? It does.
Yes. Yeah, we've involved another environmental engineer that's done thorough studies to make sure that any soil that leaves site is safe for reuse. So steel will be going vertical the week of May 11th. We've gotten, Frenchtown was our final building permit that we needed. That one is in hand now. So we have all 3 building permits in hand. We are ready to go vertical. The temporary parking lot at the athletic fields has been completed as well, which has been a nice amenity since we've taken over that back parking lot for construction. And then the FF&E furniture, fixtures, and equipment, that design process is ongoing. And the design team will be coming back with another update once all of those selections are completely finalized. Photos, you can see the foundation walls going in, and this is some of our under slab utilities. You can see just how vast it is in these photos. Hannaford, here's our construction site where our fencing is laid out. Hannaford is further along in steel erection. They're about 25% complete with the structure of the building. They are also going through underground utility work and doing some backfilling of the perimeter foundation walls. And they are on the same track with FF&E. And these photos are actually pretty exciting. So this is part of, this is the steel erection. You can see in just 2 weeks how much progress they can make. It really is quite impressive. And here they are again, trenching for some of that under slab utility work.
I haven't heard any complaining, so that's a credit
That's-
to you.
that's always good
to you
news.
because we would have heard it. by now.
No news is good news.
Yes, yeah, right.
We talking about the schools, Karen?
Yeah, no, right. No, and that is a credit to you because it's a lot,
Yes.
right?
Yeah, and they had to overcome quite a bit of delay, as you know, every town in Rhode Island had to, with historic amounts of snow that they had to remove from our project sites as they were in excavation phases and snow just kept dumping on these sites. They were still able to clear the snow out of the way, help the schools clear some of their snow out of the way as well from their parking lots to get back open and still maintain schedule. So Consigli's team has done a really phenomenal job in that regard.
Just so the council's aware, we have received some calls,
Oh.
right? So it's just,
Spoke too soon.
but we manage those calls when they come in, right? So some of the calls are abutters who are just asking questions early in the project about buffers, right? So we've got a number that as the site was cleared and it was, the leaves weren't out yet, it was like in their backyard. So we had them just kind of stand down. And, you know, once we get further along in the project, where the landscaping piece is going to come later, and we're going to work with abutting neighbors in a joint effort, most likely, to do some additional plantings. We've got a unique situation over at Frenchtown where there is an easement across several people's backyards that used to, before there was a road that circumnavigated the whole building, which there is today, as an emergency access. And so these residents were never allowed to plant or do anything with their property because we have an easement on it. So that's another group that I've been communicating with, just waiting for the project. Doesn't affect the project because it's not on town property. It's off town property. But we're thinking in the end, they should be able to plant in that area because it's no longer going to be a need. But we're not there yet, but we're kind of working along with them. I've gotten a couple calls on that. I think we received a few calls when there were, every so often foundations were going in at a site and we had to do a little vibratory excavation. We got a couple of phone calls in that respect and dealt with them at the time. I think we have a couple of cases that we're engaging through consigli, people that have had some existing cracking in their homes that were inspected as part of the home inspection process, which was well documented. So there is a little bit of engagement in that respect. Actually, we're virtually out of the ground now. So as soon as we're out of the ground, our risk drops significantly. So I don't think we're far away from that happening, right?
Yeah, there'll still be some vibratory compaction work as they're going around site, putting in driveways. So that'll be kind of our next push when it comes to vibration. We do have vibration monitors set up on the perimeter fence, which is really great data and was really great protection for the homeowners that are abutting our project site, because it does notify if there are any exceedances in vibration. The construction team is notified, and whatever activity is happening in that moment can halt and can be readdressed, and a different means. They can perform that work in a different means if they're exceeding that.
Yes.
When there's a vibration like that and a homeowner complains, they go back to the video of the property? Is that what they do to?
A couple of things. Depends on what occurred, right? So some may just say, I'm feeling something, and they may not know that there's any issue with their property at all. That's one case. Another one might be, there might be some cracking that they noticed. Then we go back to the home inspection report. If they had one done, we evaluate that. We go back and look at the readings of the machines where the work was being done. We go through that full vetting. We involve the insurer, and we have that conversation. And some of them, it's just way too early in the project to try to bring any of them to an end. So we just, everybody slow down. Let's get through the project. Sometimes it's just equipment. It's heavy equipment that might be in the area, and they may be feeling it more. So we're going to go through that process with all of them. And there's a few that have inquired about it that we've engaged thus far, and may have to circle back with them as the process goes. And then we'll have to decide through consigli, if there are small steps to be taken, if there's any type of true case involved, a legitimate claim that we could be involved in assisting to settle, just to get it finished up. And but we haven't seen anything at that level yet. But I don't want you to leave tonight thinking, Karen, we haven't received one phone call. A couple of phone calls. And one other good example is noise, right? So you have noise. We had an area that a unit that had a generator. Generator was coming on and off, providing power, but it's coming on and off, 24/7. So in the evening, the team has been making progress on some direct electrical connections, services to be able to eliminate, because the project's going to go on for another year and a half. So imagine having that 24/7, 365 for like a couple of years. So we're working with consigli and others to add some direct services, which we were able to do, I think, in 2 cases.
Yeah, the work order is in with Rhode Island Energy right now. They just need to do a little bit of tree trimming to get a pole on. We're able to get the pole on the property site versus off-site, which was even better, to be able to eliminate. The generator feeds the construction trailer, and the construction trailer does need the 24/7 electricity. It powers the cameras that they have, powers the vibration monitors. It powers a lot of things that need continuous electricity. So the bringing in that temp power pole will alleviate that concern.
So we're trying to mitigate issues like for the long term of the project. So there was a legit problem, and we went out and took readings, and we wanted to make sure they were in and around the limits of our code. Depending on what day, wind direction, everything it was around the number, but it was worth it to make this investment for the next year and a half so that it's a non-issue. So we're quietly taking steps like that instead of bothering you with those kinds of calls that come in.
And another step that we've taken is the project website. Our team updates that project website every week with the activities that are to be expected on site. So neighbors can look at the project website and say, hey, they're going to be digging near my house. This weekend, I think I might go to, my brother's house this weekend. So there are, we are making attempts to keep people as informed as possible. And for anybody listening, we do invite everyone to check that project website. It is updated regularly.
So Kate, if somebody has a concern or a complaint, where does that get funneled to? How, is there a number on the website that you would call if you have a concern or complaint, and who picks that up?
Yes, they can email me directly.
Goes directly to left
Yes.
field?
Yeah, yeah. We have a project email address, and my email address is also on there. So they can email me directly if there are any concerns or complaints. I know Chris Spiegel has been receiving correspondence as well to that regard. He's our resident abutter person, so he deals with a lot of.
It sounds like the abutter complaints are sporadic. There's no one section or one block where there seems to be a consistent concern or complaint.
I wouldn't say so. They're sporadic. Yeah.
Probably depends on what's happening at the moment. Yeah, all different locations on the site.
Can you comment on impact of any tariff policies on steel? I heard that we have the guaranteed maximum price, but that may not affect some of the steel that we still need to purchase. Is that correct?
Yeah, any potential tariffs, it really was impossible for Consigli to calculate the impact of tariffs at the time that the GMP was signed. So the tariff impact was excluded from the GMP because the tariff is really impacted at the time that the material crosses into the United States and what tariff is in effect at that time and what percentage is. And if the company will waive them or do cost share savings, any of those days, it's very much in flux. So there was no way for Consigli to be able to commit to a cost for tariffs. So that is a cost exposure that we are tracking and are actively pursuing other credits on the project to offset any potential costs that may come from
As
tariffs.
far as an impact now, it hasn't been something that has been a concern as far as the finances. Or as
We
far
have
as-
not received any tariff costs, but we do anticipate we will receive tariff costs on steel. Aluminum and steel tariffs are still active. So we anticipate lower than we had thought for the high school, but we still have not gotten any cost data for where we are with the two elementary schools, one of which we have about 50% of the steel has been delivered. We still have another 50% to go. And then Hannaford, as I mentioned, that delivery will start on the 10th for steel erection on the 11th.
Mike,
As a follow-up, so now that this, if we've paid money, right, as a, tariffs for any of the materials we have, and they're the result of the tariffs that the Supreme Court has said are invalid, right? They exceeded the president's authority. They're giving the money back. So what seems to be happening, which I don't know if it's going to happen to us, is that the corporations who import add it on, we pay it, then they apply and get it back, but have no obligation to give it back to us?
So I will say, and I'm going to tread very lightly on this topic because I do not want to claim to be an expert in any way, shape, or form in politics. But my understanding is the steel and aluminum tariff was under a different executive order than the one that was just overturned. So so
That has not yet been overturned, the steel tariff. Others have.
So do we have anything are we in that box where we've purchased anything that's subject to a tariff?
we have not paid tariff on any other building material on these projects. Steel right now is our only exposure for tariff.
But we have 50% of it in?
We do, but the tariff,
You
they
believe
have
that's
not
one
billed
that-
us yet for the tariff. We have, as you noticed, the high school steel is fully erected at this point. We do anticipate they've given us kind of an idea of what it's going to be. They are still calculating it, and Consigli is still negotiating that number down with them. So we don't have a final cost on any of it at this point.
We end up in a circumstance where we do pay it and it's found to be invalid. Is there a mechanism where, like, is it an extra, it's an extra line item that's not included, right?
Correct. It is very much a separate cost. We are going to get a separate bill for all of this, separate from ours. It'll be a change order that would come from Consigli after they've completed their negotiation with the steel vendor. And
with those vendors, if, for instance, we have to pay while it's still there's litigation or before the reimbursement happens, is there any obligation for these vendors? If we pay them for the tariff they pay and then they recover it,
If the
They-
steel vendor in Canada recovers the cost?
Yeah, so, right, that's what's happening now, right? Is that for all the tariffs, I don't know about which ones, but for all the tariffs that have been found to be invalid, the government set up the mechanism to give back the money. The corporations charged all their customers the tariff money, and we paid it. And now they're going to get it all back from the government and we don't get it back.
Yeah, this is very much not lumped into the cost of the material itself. This is a separate bill for the tariff. So, you know, when Amazon is marking up a product 20%.
Understood.
Right, that we wouldn't be able to track. This is a separate.
We're all
bill
broken out.
Just for the tariff costs
Okay.
that we.
So if they're invalidated already, then we wouldn't get billed for
Then
them.
we'd be able.
If that's the
Yeah,
case.
but again, I want to tread lightly and not speak in an area I'm.
No, I understand.
Don't hold your breath.
We have.
A lot of degrees.
Will be separated and, you know, legally, however, those costs could be recovered. We can provide the documentation.
Thank you.
It sounds like we're getting close to this term, getting out of the ground.
Yes.
That was apparently our vulnerable period there. And so is that, how far away from being past that stage are we?
We are about 85% there. We are very close. Frenchtown being the last school to go vertical and to get their steel deliveries and begin steel erection. But once we have completed excavation in those areas, then we will be out of the ground and our risk will have diminished for the building construction itself. So things like soil removals, things like running into ledge. There was a few pockets of ledge that we ran into that they had to hammer out. Thankfully, they were small pockets. Big boulders that they've had to pull out of sight, out of the ground, which we have been able to reuse most of them. The team has gotten very creative in that regard, but those were some of the biggest risks that we have incurred up until this point, and we are close to them being in the rearview mirror. I will say that for the elementary schools, when it comes to renovations, as you guys know, risk is really in the unknowns. So as you are opening up different areas of the building, that's when risk can come into play in the high school. And then demolition of the existing buildings would be kind of the next big portion of the project that would be subject to more risk, as again, risk
You
is in the
haven't
unknown.
had to do any blasting at this point.
We've not had to do any blasting. There were a few small sections of ledge at Frenchtown that they were able to use a rock hammer to remove.
How about change orders? Have there been any significant change orders? I'm not sure how you classify significant, but some that come to your attention.
We've had a few change orders, some of them relating to some safety glazing at the high school. The athletic, as we're taking the trailer offline, we did have to find a new home for the athletic trainer for the athletic facilities. So we did incur some cost to bring a trailer on site for the athletic trainer to use while we are renovating the locker rooms.
These are minimal, Mark. They're like,
Yeah.
$25,000 change order.
Yes.
So it's not pressing the limit of our policy up to $250,000. So these are,
Gave you 250, right?
yeah, exactly. Yeah. So these are minor
These are minor.
adjustments on the fly that Tom Kenworthy and I have been handling with Kate.
And I can say, as I'm listing them off, there's really only been, I think, 3 minor cost impacts. And they've been for some of those really smaller needs that we've needed to address on the project. So the contingency is very healthy at this point.
Can you just review, I guess briefly, what's going on behind the scenes between meetings when you come to the school, you come to the council and give us an update? What's the day-to-day oversight and supervision? So the OPM has staff on the site every day.
Yes, we do.
With the construction, monitoring that. And then you're delivering certain reports, monthly reports.
Yeah, we have daily reports actually that go out that monitor the construction activities, all of the vendors that are on site. And we do provide monthly financial reports to the town as well.
Right, I think as part of the contract, there's cost and payment reports for each of the consultants, the construction contract, updated cash flows, test and inspection reports. Those are all done monthly.
Yes.
And then are you reviewing that with the working group? We have this working group of the school construction committee. And how is that information reviewed by the larger group, the working group?
The financial reports, we review with the finance department and the town manager. And the testing reports are reviewed during the OAC meetings, owner, architect, contractor meetings, and are distributed by our testing vendors.
And as far as the working group, what's the schedule for meetings?
So we
in that
just
group?
put them to bi-weekly, but we do have meetings as needed. We call them as needed. So at this point, they're pretty much weekly. Whenever we have an item that comes up, we usually schedule that on our off week. So our bi-weekly meetings are still pretty weekly.
So it sounds like the fiscal piece of the project is right now under good conditions.
Yes, yeah, we are actively tracking with Consigli the status of all of their allowances, contingencies. We track our owner's contingency to understand the pace at which any of those funds could be expended. As I mentioned, the owner's contingency really has not been touched other than the few minor items that we discussed. So financially, the project is healthy.
And you're updating frequently your project schedule.
Yes.
So right now you're on schedule.
Yes.
All good news.
Good news. The projects are very, very healthy. So we're very pleased to report that.
Red lights at all? Yellow lights, anything we should?
We had some yellow
The
lights.
snow.
We had some yellow lights with the snow, and we had some yellow lights when we had excess soils that needed to be exported from the site that was clogging up our foundations, but we were able to recover that time as well at
What
Frenchtown.
was the cost of getting rid of all that soil?
It's included in the GMP.
Sorry?
It was included in the GMP.
Okay.
The removal of the soils from the site contractor, as they are reusing that material, they included the removal of it in their bid.
Is there anything we should anticipate that could be a challenge as far as getting out of the ground is a challenge because you don't really know what you're going to find once you start excavating? How about going forward now? Is there any other vulnerabilities that you are concerned about? Not specific to our project, but just as you complete a project, what's the next?
When we look at unknowns, if there's any procurement issues would be a risk. If, we've seen historically lead time issues with equipment like electrical switchgear. That has had a long lead time in the recent past,
Ordered early.
which we ordered early and is actually going to be on site in the next 2 months, well before we need it.
I'd like to thank Mr. Zarella for participating in that vote.
On which one?
When we ordered all the electrical switches. Yeah.
Yeah. So some of that risk was mitigated by those early bid packages. So procurement, when you do a new build, procurement is, I would say, the next tier of risk, aside from unforeseen conditions and workforce issues, if we were to have workforce issues, and then weather. But as we start to enclose the building, that also becomes less of a risk.
Run into any problems with the weather, let us know. We're duly elected, so we can handle it.
If you could, that would be great. Not sure where you were during the snowstorm, but yeah.
But Mark, the only other thing I would add to that is the overall budget of the program is what we started with is 160 million for 3 elements: high school, Hannaford, Frenchtown. So what Kate just referred to, which is all good news, which you were prompting in a coordinated way, which was great, that as we come out of the ground and we don't face major setbacks, change orders, or other costs, we are stockpiling savings and contingencies and other holdover funds to be able to complete Meadowbrook, which is about another 3 million or so, give or take. So out of the 160, we have been signing off on the subcontracts, and some are a little higher, a lot of them are lower. But as we avoid these other costly items, our number is getting stronger and we're gaining confidence. So in those few weeks until we're completely out of the ground, we'll feel better. And then when the existing buildings come down, we'll feel even better that we'll be able to free up officially some of those dollars to be able to fund the Meadowbrook piece. And then really after that, I'm hoping for more than that, right? You got to be once in a while, I have to be an optimist. So, I mean, not often, but once in a while. So to go beyond that, it's the ad alternates, right? So there's many that we've pulled back on and we're holding in the queue. And at that point, those concepts would come back to the SCC and or the council ultimately for authorization to either spend funding within the overall budgeted amount or not. So there's some work left, and I think that might have been, Mark and I have spoken previously about, what is there for the SCC to do today? What is there for the council or school committee to do? And really at the moment, nothing. So we're managing change orders because they've been minimal, but as the project works through its phases, you're going to get to a point in time where there'll be a discussion on some ad alternates or some changes in the project that's probably going to need, could exceed that $250,000 change order limit, or might be a question regarding finishing Meadowbrook and a few others. So those will come towards the end of the project where I think we'll see a re-engagement of the SCC and the council in terms of significantly looking through some of those items.
If you are going to spend money on Meadowbrook, it's obviously going to be more than 250,000. You'd have to do a meeting of the school construction committee, a recommendation to the council. And
That's
school
correct.
to-
Yeah. And I've spoken to the superintendent. If for any reason, anything below 250, he or I are uncomfortable with, we would just move that to the SCC
Mhm.
for a broader conversation. That's all. I don't expect that to happen. They've all been really straightforward so far, but I guess we could get thrown a wrench at some point where one of us may feel it's necessary to move it, but that really hasn't happened yet. So we're trying not to disrupt the flow. Things are moving really well. We're on time. We're trying to get through the grand openings and really kind of move the project along. So, but at some point we will recircle, but we were concerned about the same thing because there's been a disconnect for a period of time with the SEC and with the bodies. And so just recently back before the school committee and the council, and I think, every so many months we're going to do this, but if we ever get to a point where there's something of more substance, we're happy to come back at a sooner time.
I will say Meadowbrook is an essential part of our program. So as the town manager noted, our budget is for those 3 elementary schools, as we've discussed during our GMP approval process. But it is reminded of the project team weekly that Meadowbrook is a part of this. So every day, the opportunity for cost savings needs to be on the table. And I will say Consigli, especially the high school team, every week they're coming back with opportunities to reduce cost on the project and change orders that are deducts versus adds to our project. And it adds to the log that we are tracking of savings when it comes to the buyout of the final contracts from Consigli. If they are able to buy out their contract for less, the owner gets to receive those savings. So we are tracking those costs alongside allowances, contingencies, to be able to fund Meadowbrook and be able to construct it next summer, do the renovation work next summer.
Thank you. Other questions for Kate or any our manager or finance director? Great. Thank you for the update. We will see you back in the near future.
Kate, we expect every time you come here, it'll all be this good.
Too.
So I'm just saying, it's the expectation.
I would love to
I know.
have this report every day
Thanks very much.
in front of you. That's the goal.
Great.
Far so good.
Thanks, Kate.
Okay, we're going to move on to new business. I'm going to move up item 3B, which is a short first reading of an ordinance, and that way we can spend the remainder of our meeting on the presentation by the manager on the operating budget. So item 3B is a comprehensive plan proposed amendment to eliminate all statements referring to the creation of zoning in the northwest quadrant to promote housing development. This is a first reading. Just a little background on this item. On March 23rd, the Town Council and the Planning Board held a public hearing to review the East Greenwich Comprehensive Community Plan update, and at that meeting, we received public comment. Based on that input, along with the council's deliberations, tonight's agenda includes a proposed amendment to the plan that would remove statements promoting housing development in the town's northwest quadrant. The specific amendments are as follows. In the proposed comprehensive plan, or actually it's been adopted, the adopted comprehensive plan, the amendment proposals would be on page 44. Under housing goals, we would eliminate HG1 P4A1, which would create zoning in the Northwest Quadrant to promote housing development. On page 89, we would amend the future land use map to remove the mixed use designation in the Northwest Quadrant. On page 97, there is an amendment to the future zoning map to review the new mixed use designation in the Northwest Quadrant. The underlying existing zone will remain F2. On page 103, the amendment will delete the first bullet point, which refers to changing the zoning designation in the Northwest Quadrant to mixed-use commercial residential in order to comply with future land use map. And the final amendment would be on page 109. Under comprehensive plan goals, we would delete policy and action P4A1, creating zoning in the Northwest Quadrant to promote housing development. So that is the proposed. Yes.
Both Karen and I are recused from this.
Okay, thank you for alerting and reminding us of that. So I guess you can stay on the dais. It's a first reading. I don't suspect there's going to be much discussion. So for the remaining counselors, are there any questions for our staff related to the amendment of the comprehensive community plan? If we have none, I'll ask for a motion to accept the ordinance at first reading and schedule for public hearing on May 26th.
So moved.
I just want to check with our clerk. May 26th is the date that you have scheduled. Okay. So we have a motion and a second. All those in favor? Aye. Motion carries 3-0. So now we'll move back to 3A. This is a presentation from the town manager and discussion by councilors on the proposed operating budget for fiscal year 2027. So per the town code and ordinance, the manager posted on the town website his recommended fiscal year 2027 budget on May 1st. The fiscal 2027 budget starts on July 1st, 2026. The council scheduled this special meeting to provide the public and the council with an initial overview of the proposed budget. Following this introduction, a more detailed public hearing featuring the department directors is scheduled for next Monday, May 11th. So I'd like our town manager, Mr. Nada, and we have our finance director, Trish Sunderland, who are here to present their proposed budget for fiscal year 2027.
Great. Thank you, Dr. Swager, members of the council. Pleased to present that to the town council and community, the town manager's proposed FY27 budget program. This 289-page document was published and released publicly on last Thursday, April 30th, in accordance with the town charter that required its release on or before May 1st of each year. I'd like to begin the budget process this evening at a very high level by reviewing the document itself, its layout. So because our comments and what we cover here is also important for the public that may be on the call or be able to watch the meeting at a later time. Drawing your attention to certain sections that you may have an interest in, and then work through a very brief presentation that will highlight some key points for this evening, knowing that you just received the document a few days ago. It's not my intention to move into any level of great detail this evening, although the professional staff is here and will be available at each upcoming budget meeting that we have to answer any questions that you may present. We'll begin a more thorough review of specific sections of the budget and individual department sections beginning at your meeting scheduled for May 11th. First, I'd like to thank my senior team that I believe the majority, if not all, are behind me this evening, and other members of the staff that assisted in the development of this budget. To produce a document with the extent of detail that you'll find here takes a significant effort, as you can imagine. It's an effort of many individuals and in the midst of many other municipal duties that they all have. I'd like to personally thank Trish Sunderland and Rose Emilio, of whom along with my assistants, formulate a substantive section of the budget itself with the support of our entire senior team. It's we kind of divide and conquer. That's the only way we can really complete the document in a timely manner. And we'll talk a little bit about the sections that each of us handle in terms of bringing the document together really just prior to the May 1st date each year and then delivering it to you for further deliberation. As you work through the table of contents of the larger document, it's been fairly consistent the past few years. It's structured and delineated by tabs I handle personally tabs 1 and 2. Trish handles tab 3, which is 40 to 50 pages of statistical financial assessment. And then Rose handles, with the support of all the departments, tabs 4 through 10, which is really a makeup of all of the individual town departments, inclusive of the school department. So it starts off, tab 1's an introduction. For those who don't have the document in front of them, tab 2 is the budget itself, budget process and budget formulation. Tab 3 is the fund structure, descriptions and summaries. Tab 4 is general government. Tab 5 is general services. 6 is police department. 7 is public works. 8 is fire department. 9 is non-departmentals. And 10 is the school unrestricted fund. So I'm going to just take a few minutes and kind of run through what's included in those sections for those that might be on the call or follow up later. And then when I get through that process, we can pause, happy to answer any questions. And we have a fairly brief presentation, which is high level, that we have not posted publicly yet, which we will, which really just draws your attention to some key elements within the budget that I think most people will be interested in. So I'm gonna start off really on tab 1. So on tab 1-3, it begins with an introduction to the budget process, touching on an imbalance that we see. And a couple of things that I say in some of these sections are going to be critically important to some of the challenges and some of the other successes we've had in terms of developing this budget. But what it reflects is an imbalance in revenue growth and expenditure demand. It touches on economic impacts, property tax and limits on other revenue sources, state aid volatility, and education funding, infrastructure maintenance and the impacts of deferred investment, taxpayer impact and service expectations, and that may be high expectations compared with affordability and cost. So I'm going to note a few of those in each of the tabs as we work through them. The final few in section and tab 1 are mandate-driven costs, ARPA funding. That program is coming to an end at the end of 2026. Our rising debt obligations, and then there are a few other areas that we concentrate on in that tab 1 section. We then move on to the changing budget development methods, budgeting practices, organizational culture, and infrastructure investment. Provide a few thoughts on the framework of budget development. Each year I try to add some comments that really would provide the council and community with an idea as to how we take council and community policies and wants and convert them into actual implementation of projects. I mentioned a few other areas in this review, including organizational culture and how we've approached an incremental change to culture over the years, but that continues today within the organization, organizational development, training, linking this to service delivery and community outcomes, fiscal and operational implications, and kind of what we see looking forward. So that's also in tab 1. We then move on to a section that's called Budget Transition and State Budget Impacts. Provide an abbreviated update from RIPEC, their CEO, Mike DeBiase. I usually track the reporting that's put out publicly through RIPEC on FY26 budget status, looking ahead to 27, and provided some additional detail and comments on the provided by the governor in his proposed FY27 budget program, including comments on revenues, expenditures, bonding, economic development, personnel, transportation and infrastructure, housing, energy, and impacts on cities and towns. I include information from some outside agencies like that so that the community can see the things we're focused on and see the nexus between local government, state government, and decisions they're making, and how it ultimately affects our local budget program, also connected to the state budget. Moving through that section, we then move on to a section that's titled Progress and Outlook for a Municipal Program. This touches upon state, regional, and town-specific information, non-select approaches and challenges that help shape this year's proposal, and finish with a brief highlight on the proposed 6.88% levy increase as is proposed in this budget, the proposed residential rate of $16.76, an increase from $15.57 in 2026 FY26, and a commercial rate increase as proposed from $27 to $27.75, and a recommended school transfer of 4% or $1.7 million. On page tab 1-28, we then move into East Greenwich at a glance. This is a section regarding the community, labor and economic forces, and open space updates. On page tab 1-45, this represents the first section that touches upon the school district. It's a fairly comprehensive section. It provides for a general overview of the district, an update on the school construction project in more detail than even what we talked about tonight. Grade realignment, the proposed school budget is provided by the superintendent and ultimately approved by the school committee. Balancing educational investment and community priorities, strategic planning and financial stewardship within the district, balancing of interests, the approach used by the school and school budget impacts, school construction debt, fund balance reserve, and long-term sustainability. Each of those subjects, we used to touch upon those in prior drafts, but it was really a running narrative, which I think was tough for even me to follow. So we have since kind of compartmentalized that and drawn that out with headings. So should somebody just be scanning through a section of the budget message, you'll be able to stop if something catches your interest and find a little bit more targeted information than trying to move through, 10 or 20 or 30 pages of a budget narrative. Some additional information in that section on page 145 that we talk about regarding the district is we note the breakdown of state data and that we continue to be the 14th highest local share cost for school contribution in the state, and we're the 8th lowest for the state share. So that's both bad. But one is we're 14th highest in terms of contributing. We want to be a little bit lower, but we're 14th higher, which I started to include this information when we started to hear things like the town is underfunding the district or comparing us with other districts that are not parallel districts. So we wanted to make sure that once you push through the state share and the state aid, which means we're one of the lowest, as the 8th lowest in the state, what that does is that forces your local share to increase. So you'll find some districts that may have some of the highest cost per pupil in Rhode Island, and many of those districts receive an incredibly high amount of a state share, and they actually contribute fairly low. So a lot of times we're compared in a general conversation in the community that our cost per pupil is much less than another community. Well, you need to do the math behind the scenes. And so actually, face to face, we're actually contributing much more as a municipality. We're the 14th highest in the state out of 36 school districts, where other communities are contributing much less. It's the state who's making up the difference. So we include information like that within the program just for informational purposes for anybody that's interested and they want to kind of read up on it. A few other things that we touched on was some of the closing perspectives on the district itself is just sustaining support. We think it's important to sustain support for education and assist where we can in terms of managing operations, very similar to how we're helping to manage the school construction project. Please, yes.
I'm sorry. Can you look at 1-52?
Sure.
1-52. At the bottom.
Yep.
Okay. So it says net increase anticipated in individual tuition from a projection of 360,000 in FY26 to 500,000 in 27 with actuals 292.
So this is information provided within the approved school budget. And so I'm reflecting that here, and I presented it in this format so that talking to the superintendent, they felt good about the projections that they have, and they feel that there is an influx of tuitions, which based on their calculations, we should see that increase of approximately $140,000 in FY27. I included the actual number just to show where we were in the projection for 26 this year, is $292,407. So they're anticipating a significant influx of students, which they're tracking today. So the superintendent and I had that conversation because I think, as we know, concerns that have been raised in the past would be an overestimation on revenues. When you're not generating a surplus to cover that, ultimately means it's a deficit. So whether you overexpend or you overestimate your revenues and you don't receive that money, you're creating a deficit situation. So he and I did talk about it. He felt confident in the numbers that they included.
And when,
Wait, I'm sorry, the projection for 26 is FY 26 was 360,000 and the actuals in FY 26 is currently 292. And so they are over projecting. I mean, they're not,
In the-
they only have like a
in this
month
budget.
left.
Yeah, in this budget. Yep. So what they're looking for in terms of the assessments that they've done and the interest they've had, they feel confident that they're going to be able to achieve in the vicinity of the $500,000 or a net increase of about 140 based on the budgeted amount in 26. So
That's,
all right.
I mean, they're already at a deficit for this year. So I mean, I'm assuming that they're going to end up at a deficit for next year. I mean, to go to Karen's question, I mean, I mean, they're, whatever.
So the challenge you have with revenues, right? So it's not like it's a program. So ultimately, if you were uncomfortable with that, let's say later in the process, it's not a 4% increase, you lower it to 3.8% and you reduce it. Ultimately, they have to find where to make up the difference, right, within there. So they would have,
They're overestimating as it is. They continually overestimate their revenue stream and then,
Well,
I mean, or they continue to either over or underestimate wildly is what I think.
well, the last couple of years, they've pulled back. I think mainly last year, the Medicaid reimbursement, a number of others, they were pulled way back. So there are a number, and they're noted here in that one section, Karen's on tab 1-52. It talks about Medicaid revenue to their recommendation is to increase that to 340,000 in FY 27. It's an increase in the budgeted amount for 26 from 300,000, and their projection in 26 is 300.
Can I-
So it's another category. So you've got another $40,000 in an estimated increase. That's also noted.
I understand that they're overestimating, but is that wise to do that?
Well, I'm not sure that they would
I
agree
mean,
that
that's an
they're
opinion,
overestimating.
obviously.
Yeah. Yeah. So their thought is that they're going to achieve, based on the information that they have, that they're going to achieve that number. So
And what
time
the-
will tell.
And
If
what's
the
the
students,
What's the history there?
yeah, that's a legitimate concern to raise that, I mean, I think those within the district should be aware of that, but I think the superintendent felt comfortable based on the information he was presented with that they may see numbers upwards of 500,000 in tuition.
The other one was when we had our meeting in February, they were counting on over $1 million, $1 million plus from the federal government as far as special ed. Looking at the federal government, not looking good. So where is that tracking? I know that's not in here. Do we know where that's tracking?
I may not have it with me, Karen, but they did include, no, not at this point where it's tracking, still too early to tell, but they did include that, I believe, in their budget document, which but I think it's too early for them to actually have good information on that. So these are the kinds of adjustments that we would make mid-year, right? So even after the budget's approved, there are times during the year that you have to pivot. You just can't keep spending.
Right.
When revenues are lagging, should that happen, you have to make mid-year changes to be able to cover the differential. And that's what we would do, whether it affects operations, services, people, depending on the severity of the shift, based on how you're tracking for surpluses, whether you can eat that cost, make up for it or not. So those are the kind of things that I think many districts don't customarily have to do during the year, but that we're strongly recommending that if you're going to present significant growth in revenue categories, you have to do it really conservatively, and you need to continue to track it and be prepared with Plan B should they not be realized.
Right. Plus, we want to avoid the situation that happened last spring. Had, many meetings at Cole, crying, and rightfully so, that they're going to lose their job. So we're trying to avoid that, right? And in fairness to them, when you look over what they're asking, which is about 1.8 million, and if you add the salaries and health and dental, it doesn't leave a lot of money left over. Plus, they were let's say, phrase it right, they received less money last year, and they're going to receive less money this year. So I am sympathetic to their needs. However, I do believe that they need to do really conservative budgeting, and I don't know, it seems to me that I would budget less for something if I wasn't sure I was going to get the money. Is that nutty? I don't think so. Okay.
We have a new superintendent. And I know that part of I had asked about how we were carrying whatever the Medicaid revenue, 300,000 a year, every year. And what do we actually collect? So when they say projection here for 2026, it's the same number as the budgeted, right?
No, it's
Didn't they
not.
say-
No, they're projecting. Yeah, though it's a different, I think, years ago, I think it was all budgeted numbers. Like,
Just trying to
I think
understand what
that's
this,
changing now. We had asked for the actual, so you got not in my budget document, but in the school's
oh, okay,
This
summary,
right.
they provided 3 years of actuals
So did they
compared
hit-
to the 3 years of budgeted.
So it went from 300 to 340, but I'm just wondering, did they hit 300 or 340 in the?
No,
actual?
yeah, they're budgeted for 3 this year. Their projection is 3. They're increasing their budget proposal for next year at 340. So they're projecting a $40,000 increase over what they're budgeted and projecting to receive in 26.
Which ends
Couple months, yeah.
a couple months, so they're pretty close to that. And do you happen to know offhand how that's running right now? If you don't, that's fine. I'm just wondering.
Yeah, so I think what they're looking at is in 2025, their actual revenue is, they received $380,610. So that's an actual for prior year. So
Okay.
I'm assuming, they're assuming that they'll be receiving the same, which is why they went up in that category.
Okay, so it is a conservative budget if you went based on the 380?
Medicaid.
Yeah.
For Medicaid, yeah.
So Karen, they hadn't, I think before they hadn't received the 300 they kept running, but now they did receive 380 and budgeted 340.
Actually, it looks like for 2024, they budgeted 385 and they received 380 in Medicaid revenue. I'm looking at their actual budget to actuals. And then 25 to
It's a
26.
pretty good budget projection there.
Yeah, right now, but then they were wildly off the years before. So that's, I
Yeah.
think, a fair assessment
Yeah.
to be concerned about there.
Now, I feel like the superintendent has heard what, he's
Yeah.
fully aware of what happened, and I feel like, at least what I've read, he's grounded in these.
Yeah, I think it's early. I mean, I know it's not early. It's early for us in terms of not having finished a year yet to be able to project. We don't yet have, there's a lot happening at the State House right at the moment. We're not sure who's going to finish the term as the speaker. We're not sure how various legislative pieces are going to be entertained, what's going to move forward, what's not. Some of that may have an effect on us. Just recently, they released the March update for communities on education aid. We lost a few $1,000s. Really, it wasn't much of a change, but there are other things that could potentially change going into the next year or the year after that could benefit our district. So I think, when we talk about tuitions too, I mean, there is an ongoing lawsuit. I'm not sure if the council's aware of this, where RIDE establishes the tuition cost per student. So we have a lot of students who come from Warwick to East Greenwich. The city of Warwick is contesting the amount that RIDE has established. Most districts just take the number. Whatever formula they have, they calculate it, and each community uses the number that's assigned to them. So Warwick is contesting that, and so Warwick is not paying that number. They're actually paying what they believe the number should be, which is much less. So we have the ability this year and moving forward to lose funding because of that case. So the district is defending it, and along with many other districts. So there's things like that the district is not even in going to be responsible for or have much of an impact on, but they're doing what they can to be able to defend the district itself and require at least some type of equitable compliance with ride regulation that gets put out. So things like that, they're not responsible for, but they're continuing to adapt. So, I mean, at this point, I think point taken, Karen, in terms of history. So hopefully our superintendent, who is looking at things, I think, a little bit differently, at least during my tenure than other superintendents have, will track this in an appropriate way so that we don't see the fluctuations in revenue or the deficits. It's tough enough just to balance a budget, never mind when you're overestimating revenues. So hopefully that is not happening in this case.
I just would add for the council that if we do want further information from the school department, we could have the superintendent, finance director, or some component of their management come to our budget meeting. So it's something for us to consider. If you think you need more information during the deliberations of the budget, they have said that they would be willing and able to come to our budget deliberations if requested.
I do have to say, I mean, I'm very thankful for the superintendent sending this to us, with the budget to actuals for the last, so it has a budgeted amount and actually what they actually spent. And I think you can see the variance between, at least I agree. I think the current superintendent, Dr. Kenworthy, is definitely trying to get a handle on some of these numbers.
And just so we were not, it's fine that we did. We were not planning on diving into any specific budget tonight. So
No,
we will come prepared to really review with time dedicated with additional professional support should the district want to have a superintendent or others here, finance personnel, other administrators that could offer some insight directly to your questions to be able to answer those questions before you decide on the transfer amount. And I think that would be important, especially with the information that's been provided this year, to be able to answer those questions directly, Karen, as to, how did you go about, what information are you seeing that gives you confidence that you're going to see a direct substantive increase in revenues from outside tuitions and questions like that. Okay, I'm just gonna continue on and kind of pushing through a high level oversight, and then we've got a brief presentation. But this is about the document, just so because again, you just got it. There's a lot of information. It'll take you some time to push through it. But next section, tab 1 is page 68, which is Town Council's goals and priorities. So that section is broken out into 12 subcategories, including budget development and fiscal management, communication and education, core services and facilities, land use, housing, sustainability, environmental and natural resources, cultural and historic resources, economic development, circulation, human and social services, New England Institute of Technology, and public safety, fire and EMS services. So out of those sections, we were working from a set of goals and objectives that continues to evolve over time. Every town council does a little bit differently. Some like to hold a work session and talk specifically about areas of interest. We've yet to do that here. One thing that I do is based on tracking your involvements, your policies, and your interests. We integrate those into the goals and objectives, and then we break those out further. So there is a significant set of goals and objectives in detail within this budget document that help guide the senior team in their specific sections. So, planning is land use and housing, right? Sustainability, maybe even cultural and historic resources. Education is noted there. Core services and facilities is DPW. Budget development and fiscal management is more finance. Human and social services are more community services. You've got clearly a public safety, fire and EMS services and what that means. So we track major projects, we track goals, objectives, accreditation, things along those lines. And then we continue to phase out things that have been accomplished, and we modify those goals based on departmental and council interests and priorities that you've set. So that's a substantive section that we really broke out in more detail this year and compartmentalized it for people to find things a little bit easier within that larger section. Following tab 1 is tab 2. Tab 2 is starting on 2.1 through 2.10. It's a municipal budget program, including a brief budget message. The section looks at the proposed program, revenue structure, expenditure drivers and cost pressures, capital planning and long-term investment, enterprise fund and component units, service delivery and operational adjustments, workforce considerations, a multi-year financial outlook, policy considerations, community objects, and long-term goals. A brief overview of the FY27 program is included, the budget process, the tax levy, debt considerations, levy trending, school services, library services, and a few final notes that kind of touch on core services, information and capital programs, debt obligations, and financial decisions compared to community priorities. So that's in tab 2, pages 1 to 10. Starting on 2-11 looks at future planning considerations, including school district facilities in the master building plan, highway garage construction. So this is some major initiatives that we have, not all of them, but many of them that are up and coming. Our highway garage construction and renovation and salt barn replacement, the comp plan rewrite, waterfront study and future improvements, continuing evolution of the municipal energy aggregation program, our Main Street rehabilitation, the ARPA funding program, our public engagement program, as well as the possibility of the Eldridge School being decommissioned in the next year to year and a half, and the future development of that site. So more detail on each of those initiatives is included in that section. Tab 3, from page 3 to 41, talks about and this really is Trish's section. It runs through strategically a number of critical financial assessments, providing recommendations and insight as to how those are impacted. You know, that section covers the form of government, manager council form of government, the budget process, the budget calendar, the basis of budgeting and accounting, budgetary control, financial policies and practices, opening budget policy, revenue practices, debt management practices, reserve fund, our accounting, auditing, and financial reporting policies. Tab 3-9 is really talks about Charter Provision 55 and Chapter 55 of the Charter in the proposed budget. Talks about the fund structure and the fund description, including general fund, debt service funds, special revenue funds, capital funds, and priority funds, proprietary funds, meaning wastewater enterprise fund and the compensated absences fund. Tab 3-15 starts to look at the statistical review and the beginning of the budget development process. 3-16 covers general fund revenue summary, category and source. 3-22 talks about the combined statement of sources and uses for all budgeted funds. 3-24 is compliance with state property tax cap and breakdown of property tax categories. Page 3-25 is a breakdown of user fees. 3-27 is school housing aid and state and federal aid revenues. 3-29 is departmental revenues, fines and charges. Miscellaneous revenues is on the next page, 3-30. You've got fund balance application, which talks about the town's fund balance use, schools fund balance use, and then also the first year where Trish recommended a almost $582,000 use of debt service fund to help lower the tax impact. So that's funding that we've been putting aside. So this year we're allocating about $582,000 to lower the overall tax impact because of the debt obligations with the school construction project. 3-31 talks about general fund expenditures, the program summary by area of service. 3-24 is expenditures for fund type. It's all budgeted funds, and really all of the town's budgeted funds. It totals about $97 million. That's general fund, debt service, wastewater, school operating budget, and the library service fund. Page 3-33 is general fund expenditures by use type. 3-36 is all budgeted fund expenditures. 3-38 is a capital pay-as-you-go program. Gives you a summary of the CIP supported projects as well as the debt service detail. 3-39 is consolidated debt service requirements. 3-40 is debt ratio and debt per capita assessments. And then on 341 to 44, it's the position allocation and pay schedules that kind of run through all of the town staff. So that pushes us to tab 4. Tab 4 through 10 were developed by Rose Emilio in each of the individual departments. Page under tab 4.1 to 4-15 is the town manager, town council, personnel, town clerk, municipal and probate court, and legal services. Under tab 4, pages 1 to 15. Tab 5 is the finance department, information technology, planning, community services, which includes harbor, park, senior and human services, and prevention and support services. Tab 6 is the police department, includes civilians as well as animal control operations. Tab 7 is the DPW department, engineering, building inspection, buildings, highway division, and wastewater. Tab 8 is the fire department. Tab 9 is insurance and claims, contingency, grants and contributions. And tab 10 is, again, a modified version, but more of a replication of what was presented in terms of the school department's budget program. So it's the school department, school committee, and that reflects an overall request of just over $52 million, or a 3.5% overall budget increase from the school side. So that is really the document itself, and I think it's important that not only the council, but our staff and the community take time to find the sections that interest them in the coming weeks before we really dive into some of the further detail. We did provide a brief presentation, which there's a little bit of overlap that I can skip over fairly quickly, that Lee can push through the slides for me in terms of the overall presentation, but it does draw some attention to a few areas that we think are important in this overall process. So page 2 is just an introduction, as noted, noting the council's participation, and then the background. And the why we're formatting some of the ways we are is that we are trying to assimilate to a GFOA standard of budgeting and particular elements that need to be included in a budget document nationally. So as you see categories that are starting to be included, that's why you see pages like this included. Next page talks about just long-term capital investment, department budgets, management team review, really the full process, council review and public presentation. So really kind of steps 1 through 4 of what it's going to take for us to move through this process each year. The next page covers some key metrics. We've got the full FY25 year has been concluded. We're still in 26. So this provides some metrics that we're going to start to integrate a little bit more for all of our departments. So this covers some metrics for the police department, fire, public works, building, community services, and our library. Some easily trackable metrics. We have other metrics that we'd like to add to this list and build this into a kind of a more robust section that residents can, and as well as we, can go on and do some year after year comparisons to see some trending in maybe police department calls or the specific types of calls that we're seeing from the fire department. We can track staffing levels fairly easily. We can track permits, inspections that you see in the building inspector's office, permits issued, and things like that, that I think.
I'm sorry.
Please.
It's not in our pack. This is just for here, right?
That's right. I emailed you this presentation.
Oh, sorry.
You should have it. Yeah, no, it's okay.
No, I'm
problem.
just curious. I mean, that's a lot of calls, I think, on the police and the fire department, and it just,
So many,
inspections on the building department. I mean, yeah, I'm
yeah, and so we need to do that right now with metrics, right? We need to be able to track it to justify the need, the expense, additional staffing, additional equipment, services, systems that we're putting into place. And as long as we have the justification for that, we'll use the metrics to back our way in terms of arguments that we're making and proposals to the council and the community as to why we need to advance certain elements. So there's clearly much more we can do with metrics, and we plan on doing that in the coming years. So next page is, I'm not going to hit this, talks about the breakdown of the tabs, which I just highlighted for you. Then we get to the high level overall budget review. So the next page talks about the proposed municipal budget, 97 million overall. That's all funds. Tax levy increase as initially proposed, 6.88%. Full-time staff is going to increase by a half a position to 154.5. That's just the town staff. And we're presenting in the month of May, hopefully to have this process completed by early June when the council is obligated to adopt a budget on or before June 10th. Next page looks at the budget at a glance. General fund revenue, about 29.97 million. Total property tax used, 71.3. The remainder is alternate funding sources. The school transfers it's recommended at 44.6 million, and we have a debt service transfer of just over $6 million for FY27. So next page touches on our general fund revenue sources. There's a lot more detail in the budget document on revenues and expenditures than what you're going to find in this presentation, but it really breaks down ultimately where that $29 or $30 million in revenue comes from. You can see its property taxes is about 22 million, or about 73%. State and federal aids about 4.5 million. Revenues and fines about 1.8. That's the area that we're trying to enhance. We think a number of our fees are either dated or don't exist. So we're working with all departments to be able to refine that, make them appropriate as necessary, but also to make sure that we're in compliance with state guidelines in those cases where guidelines apply, regulation applies. Licenses and permits, the fund balance applied, investment income, and miscellaneous revenues. The next page touches on our revenue trending. And, you can see overall general fund revenues are fairly static. They do not increase significantly. Our state aid has been fairly static. There's been minor increases. There's been a few spikes in recent years in specific accounts. But our general fee structure is fairly stable on the general fund side. But we are starting to see an elevation in tax need. So you're starting to see property tax need, which I think by the time we get through the process, you'll see that that's really debt driven, right? So we understand some of the decisions we've made with the support of the community in recent years is going to drive that impact. Next page talks about the combined budget summary. So this is school operating budget of 52 million, or 53.6% of the overall program. Debt service fund, which is all debt service, is about 9.29 million, or 9.6%. Wastewater enterprise is a little over a $5 million program, or 5.3%. And the library fund, again, which is a separate fund, which we fund the majority of the library, somewhere between 70, I think it's closer to 80%. We'll get to that at some point in the coming sessions. That budget is up to about 637,000, or 0.7% of the overall program.
Andy, can I ask you a question for a second? The debt service, you have a slide, debt service transfer 6.05 million. And then at a later slide, debt service fund is 9.29 million. So what is the difference in those two numbers?
Tax impact, 6.05?
Yeah, 9 million is the amount liability we have, and tax transfer required for the fund. The rest of it is other revenue sources, third-party revenue.
Okay, thank you.
You'll see that in the budget document, Mark, where it really gets broken out in terms of overall debt, what category of debt, and then Trish backs out of that, housing aid and other elements, a federal subsidy that we receive to get down to that 6 million, 6.05 million, which is what we need new tax dollars in FY27 to pay for. In addition to the 6.05, which you don't see in this abbreviated summary, is the 581,000 in debt service fund transfer. So you know how Trish established the debt service fund a few years ago, anticipating FY27 and 28. So this in FY27, we're recommending about 581,000 as a subsidy to lower the tax impact to get it down to 6.88 of a levy, and to get the 6.05 down from 6.5 million, gets it down to 6.05.
Any quick question? You don't have to answer it if we don't know it off top. If Trish, probably, if you don't know it, the 72%, when you look at the revenues on property taxes, what's the current breakdown between our tax categories?
Us in the assessment.
Yeah, residential and.
How are we getting to the 71?
Yeah.
So you're talking about 73 on the 73%, 73.2 on property taxes, is that?
Yeah, I'm wondering just,
On the other
our different
page? Okay.
categories, just looking for the breakout that's currently, because they may have, increased in value at different
Yeah.
rates. I don't.
Right. So of the $73 million is from residential, from the residential base, is 54,942,000.
Would I be, if I asked you for that in percentages, do you have that or not?
Seventy-five percent.
Okay, and the 25%, the only categories left are the vanishing, tangible, and commercial.
Commercial and personal
right.
property. Mhm.
Okay, thank you. You know, the tangible, I know it's going to get fixed right now.
Tangible is fixed, yes.
Just wondering what that percentage is this year.
How many numbers I have in a spreadsheet? You'll ask for the ones I don't have. 8%. 8% is coming from tangible.
8%. Okay, thanks.
the
And
balance
that'll be
will
an
be commercial.
ever diminishing percentage, right? Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, the next page just notes some things we were just talking about. It talks about in this initial proposal, existing FY '26 residential tax rate of 1557. There's a recommendation to increase that to 1676. And the commercial rate from 27 to 27.75, and the personal property just stays fixed, as was just noted, at 4550. So at the bottom of that page, it does note that overall the 6.88% levy does exceed as we all know, but I'll just say it, the 4% statutory cap. And we have only issued, Trish has only issued the first tranche of debt for the school project. The second tranche, we are hoping to get it into January or February of 27, right? Yes, 27 before that's issued. And that would allow it not to impact the FY '27 budget program. It would affect the '28 budget program. So, but a lot of that,
We'll have both of those online then.
that's right. So FY '28 is the second year,
Yeah.
the more impactful year than this year, which is kind of, we were setting that table for a few years
We'll
now.
really feel the loss of the
Yeah.
pay-go.
Yeah. So, and that's the reason why the recommendation came forward to start the debt service fund. Again, there's only so much funding available to put into the debt service fund. So this year we're able to invest 581,000. And so we'll have to see what's available for the FY '28 budget program as we go forward. Next slide talks
So
about,
ju-
I'm sorry. Yeah, go ahead, Karen.
As long as you have all these numbers there.
Please.
So if we're asking to raise the residential to 16.76 per thousand, give me what's the average?
Yeah, so median,
What are we using
we
now?
printed it just before the meeting, so I can tell you what the median is. Median, as Trish calculated, is about 727,000 for value, median house value. That increase would be $888. So this past year, the year that we're in, the median cost of a home value was 725,000, almost the same, but at a 1557 rate was about $600. So from the 25 to the 26 we're in, it was almost a $600 effect. And then going to next year, you're looking at about 800, almost 890 of an effect for a home that's valued at 727.
And Karen, we traditionally, municipalities traditionally have 3 buckets available for tax, to spread the tax impacts: tangible, the commercial, and residential. Once the state freezes tangible at a number, you're really putting all the rest of it forever on the other 2 categories. So, and they did that just before all the school bonds were issued. So.
Something we can talk about in future meetings in some detail are really steps in the budget process that the school department took, as well as the municipal departments took to downsize the program. Like, we knew this was coming, I asked departments to really submit their requests that they really feel they need to support, and then we pull back from those numbers, right? So we have pulled back significantly, and we'll be able to go into some detail with you at subsequent meetings, both on the town side and the school side, as to, $1 million+ in each of those programs that has since been removed from what had originally been requested from the senior team, school administrators, and others to get to where we are. And I think that will help set the table, because we deliberated about the reaction that we would get from the council and community at 6.88. So we knew that's a hard number, even though we've been talking about it for a few years now. There was no context, right? You didn't know how much it was going to cost you in your home based on what it was valued. So now we know. And so now it's impactful. We've been saying it's impactful, but we didn't have anything to base it on. So now we do. So we'll kind of walk through that process. And I think that will help educate you as to what's already been pulled out and what it will take to get you to a place, if you feel it's necessary to continue to reduce the 688. How much pain will everyone's going to go through to get it to 6.5 or to get it to 6, or even if that's possible. So, but we want to make sure that you have all the information you need to be able to deliberate over that, as you consider all
So
options.
you'll give us a couple different scenarios. Is that what you're
Yep.
anticipating?
By all means, yeah.
I assume at this point, given the federal cuts to the General Assembly, which now trickle down to us in a bigger way than a lot of other communities, the cut in the state funding, the freezing of the tangible tax, like our options, and the fact that we're building the schools, is now time to pay for them. Everybody wants new schools. I think it was a 70% yes, and now we have to pay for them. I'm assuming many of the scenarios, wherever you're going to present, to take us by half of 500 basis points a couple of times. I assume we're just gonna make decisions about how we value that versus cutting services, people and services. Is that those are the options we have left, right?
How
Pretty
about,
much it.
did I hear you correctly say that you were only going to hire one half of a person? So
Yeah, for FY27, we show a half a position that's added.
That's the obvious
One,
points.
154 to 154.5, yeah.
But
Yeah,
to move that needle in a big way, you got to cut a lot of things.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. And so, those are decisions that have been made in the past. I mean, our municipal staff constricted during COVID. We constricted, we pulled back, and then since very strategically have added a few positions, other than what we've been mandated. We were recently, Fred Gomes is here, mandated to add 2 positions by DEM to our wastewater facility. Again, enterprise fund, not tax funded, but we added 2 full-time jobs mandated to help support the collection system out in the field. We just recently we have been funding a position for a number of years, but didn't fill it. We filled it finally, and that, as noted before the council, is our resiliency planner in Al Rinaldi's, the planning department. And we feel comfortable that with all of the state and federal initiatives associated with resiliency, that's where all the money is. So we have a top-notch person in Jessica Henry, who has hit the ground running and been with Al for about a month now, who's doing an excellent job. And we think that was strategic in terms of bringing somebody in. There's a handful of towns in the state that have somebody who works in resiliency, and the work that Jess does is going to really open up some grant opportunities for us. So we're trying to
I think that'll be a
leverage.
net positive, just having somebody
That's right.
in the
Yeah.
business who knows how to get where the money is and how to get it.
So we're trying to be strategic in terms of how we do that.
I hear what you're saying, Andy, but this is a very tough budget. I've told everybody I know, taxes are going up. I said, you have to pay for the schools eventually. And, but Trish, and we're going to get a lot of, if we leave it like this, and I don't know that we should, we're going to get complaints because paying for gas is ridiculous now. I don't see that coming down. Home heating fuel, most of the homes here probably heated by oil. That's gone up. So, people are probably stretched a little.
Sure they are. Yeah.
So,
When I look back, that's interesting you say that, Karen. So I look back and I think some of the narrative that I have in the budget message talks about kind of deferred investment and things like that. So I think, years ago, and you can't look back. I can look back and compare, but none of us were sitting there at the time. Decisions were either made or not made. So we don't have context as to why other investments weren't made 20 and 30 years ago when they needed to happen. You know, why didn't you build a new school and 10 to 15 years later, do the next one, 10 to 15, do the next one. So there's some overlapping in debt. You know, you can look back, but it was a different time, different economic pressures, different leadership, locally, statewide, nationally. So it's very hard to look at that. But at this point, I would say your choice was either to embrace the deferred investment model again and say, boy, we can't. We're not going to invest in communications for police and fire. We're not going to upgrade our fleets. We're not going to make investments in senior services or in our schools, or you make the investment knowing it's going to cost you a hell of a lot more in the future to do it if you deferred it now. So that's a narrative. I'd love to start that narrative locally, and I'm sure you'll have that with a lot of your constituents to, you know, you learn a lesson. You either have to pay or you don't pay, and then you hope you're not around, I guess, later when the bill comes in to pay. When you actually make the investment, right?
Right.
I mean, I think that's a fair criticism. I mean, years of deferred investment in the schools and certain parts of the town, and people asked for services for years and years. I think, you know, there was that policy of the 2% levy year over year. I think that kind of delayed, you know, a lot of stuff, and now we're paying the price for it. And this is something that was actually voted on by the residents, that they wanted these schools. This was a common request. It was opportunity. But it is, I mean, let's not deny this is expensive. To pay for this.
In looking back, it's, you know, in the early 90s, schools were funded in a very different way. In the early 90s, there was a state match on what you spent per pupil. And you know how you described how the total spend is this because we don't get any state money, but our spend is much higher than most. The wealthier communities spent more money per pupil. They didn't have the same challenges. They didn't have English as a second language. They didn't have securities. They didn't have a whole lot of different things that urban schools have, right? And so they could spend it. And it got matched. So the rich got richer in that scenario. And this formula, as imperfect as it is, was an attempt to try to make the resources at the state level go where they were most needed. And even though we don't like some of the outcomes, in large measure, it does a much better job than what that was. And we also are in a time when it's not as easy today with the current funding formula to just say this is the same decision that you would consider having made 20 years ago. Because right now, we get very little help on our capital projects, but in this one moment in time, we get a much, much larger state share. We won't get it in terms of our operating budget. We may not get it again ever in terms of our spend. So in this one moment, it's even a greater obligation. Do it responsibly, but make the investment in the community now, because you may not ever see this again. And I think that was the thinking, and that was kind of what we talked to the residents about. And I thought they made a decision. 70% of them said, of course that makes sense. And
Agree. I think if East Greenwich is going to remain a community that offers public education, you can't turn down $85 million from the state.
Agreed.
But the problem is when you accept that check, it makes you vulnerable. And that's what I'm concerned about, that we're vulnerable now. We're walking a very fine line with our funding. And so I think you brought up the COVID analogy, which is interesting. We really hunkered down. We weren't sure what was coming. So we constrained our budget. Fortunately, it wasn't really as bad as we had anticipated. You know, the payroll protection plan, the ARPA funds, it shielded us a bit. But I almost feel like we're in the same situation where we're vulnerable, and we may need to constrain to some extent over the next couple of years. I think, you know, how we go forward, Andy, we need to discuss a little bit more tonight. We're going to have our department heads here to defend their budgets. I think I'm curious about your response, not necessarily tonight, but as far as looking at revenue and looking at expenditures a little more closely. One thing I was interested in is how we can think about the magnitude of things like fee realignments. Now, you had mentioned fee realignments, and I think that's going to be a major change in our revenue sources. The other things I had written down were grants. I don't know if there's anything that we're anticipating or possibly might be eligible for. I think in the budget document, there's some discussion about investment income. I know I had talked to Trish about that. I think most of that is designated for investment income, but there is some discussion about that we would plan to hire an investment advisor to access fixed income markets, aiming at higher rates of return than in previous years. And then expense reductions, virtual net metering, have we already funded that into our
So we
expense?
actually just had a meeting on that today with Amoresco. They are handing the project off to Luminous, I think. So we haven't yet started seeing the credits come through. Shockingly, Rhode Island Energy is a little behind on that. But given the nature of how those credits are generated, we're not going to see anything material anyway. So obviously it was during the winter months that farm came online. It was the end of the calendar year where it actually came online. So you're talking, the darker months of the year. So you're not going to see a lot of generation anyway. So we will start to see that come May, but they are going to true up our credits that should have been received by the farm from January through April. And we'll start seeing them on the monthly bills, but I don't think we're going to know until the year is over.
You really can't budget that.
It's not a budgeting
Or you can't
item anyway.
reduce the expense.
It's, yeah, it's a reduction in your expenditures. So I don't think we're going to have a good handle on how much credit that farm will generate for us until we see some actual usage.
The other piece, Andy, that you've been very skillful at, and Trish over time, last number of budgets, is workforce management. Which positions you fill that may be empty, retirements, incentives for retirement, those types of things. I'd want to hear more about that. You also mentioned technology-driven savings with implementation of new software. We have our rescue billing, those types of things. And you also mentioned in your report regional collaboration, shared service agreements. Again, I know we can't take them to the bank, but I think that it was interesting you mentioned that. I think in your manager's letter, I think the most important thing that stuck with me was your sentence that service delivery must evolve and respond to fiscal and operational realities. And this can include both new service development and constriction or elimination. And so in some cases, this results in modest service adjustments, which are necessary to align resources with current fiscal constraints while preserving essential functions. So I see us really in a constrained model right now because of the increased debt. So I think I'd ask for other counselors to outline some of the things they'd like to hear more about, and then potentially decide what to ask you to come back at the next meeting with, as far as just some other budget pro formas.
Yeah, we're going to work through each discipline, so we'll have plenty of time to just stop, talk about revenues. We can talk about expenditures generally. We can talk about personnel, like services, whatever, and then in each of the disciplines of all the departments.
But what you're going to do to what kind of reductions move the needle and how much? So if you're at a 6.88 levy, if you go down by 0.5%, you go down to 6.38, full percent 5.88, 1.5, 5.38, and what that does as far as your tax rate.
Yeah, I think when you give it context, you're not going to see a lot. You're not going to see much of a return. You're going to start to see service erosion for very little money, depending on what area we're talking about. I think you'll find too is that there is, and I would tell you if it was otherwise, I think I have in other years, we do not have an extensive staff here. There isn't. So although I don't disagree, staffing costs drive it, but there's a certain level of expectation. A number of the departments behind me, I could easily recommend hiring 6 more people. And these are mostly boots on the ground in the field. We need bodies. I'm not talking about administrators necessarily, but just bodies to be able to maintain some of the expectations that we see from residents that live here. And be able to keep up with them in terms of their service expectations. So that would be an open conversation. And some of that you may find in the midst of the goals and objectives. as you look through those documents in each of those areas, some of the expectations are layered in there based on actions that we're slowly implementing. The other thing I'll say, Mark, is that, after COVID, how I looked at it, and if you looked at the goals and objectives and you looked at our conversations, we kind of said, okay, we're starting over. Now we want to accomplish something, right? Everybody, council, staff, we built a team. Now we wanted to accomplish it. So, and I think when you go back and you look at the things you wanted to accomplish, you got $1 million from the federal government to start our work on the waterfront. You did your waterfront stuff. Sound issues, right? We got Main Street is now being planned and is breaking ground.
Mm-hmm.
That will cost us something. Most of that is non-local tax dollars. It's state. Programmatically in the community, you got 1.6 million at SWIFT. State money, federal money passed through the state, no local tax dollars. So a lot of major, and we've got our school construction project. Number of other smaller initiatives that we could probably reel off another 10 things of major accomplishments, I think, that had been on the council's list for years. Actually finally say, this is what we're going to do. And so we're at that point, and now the bill comes where now we have to start to be able to factor in how we can make it affordable to continue to knock off that list some major initiatives that the community, the council, and others are wanting to see in terms of quality of life. And I think that's kind of where we find ourselves right now.
So that section,
I think that's an important part. I think I would like to see if we're going to reduce by like 0.5% each time. I'd like to see what is cut. I think it's important for people to understand what they're losing in order to pay the bill. And I'm not saying that that's, I understand that we all voted on the school bond and everything like that, but it's also important to realize that there are other considerations, there are other residents who are not using the schools who do need to know what they might lose or may lose in a reduction of.
Yeah, I
This
think
was not unexpected. We discussed that these were going to be 3
this is
year.
the on-budget project.
Right.
This is not it's not that something went wrong. This is expected. This is actually what we talked about, what we planned for. And, Indy, I for one will not be, if you're going to show proposals to drop 500 basis points or 50 basis points at different things, I won't be deciding how you would do that. I would like you to tell us.
Yeah.
But the way I think of what we did is we already run a lean government. What are our tax rates increased 0.32% for 6 years or something, and the house has increased like 62% in value. So we know we are good stewards of money. We took the idea that we had this great opportunity to get all this state money to build schools, once in a lifetime. We asked the public, we took it. You'd heard one member of the public thought we should borrow $250, right? Barrington's doing $250. Okay, we have a responsible approach. We're doing reasonable work out there that the state is paying for half of it, right? And we're never going to get that. When I conceived that we should go this way, when that made sense to me, I wasn't thinking that, well, if the residents want to build these schools for the community, which supports their housing values clearly, I wasn't thinking that we would, we did that and we brought it in on time and on budget, that we then cut our staff and cut our programs, that we'd go into COVID mode. That's not what I was thinking. And that's not what I think today. I think that our community wanted these schools. We're an education first community. And I believe, and having talked to you, that we run a lean ship. So I don't expect that we're going to be cutting out fat if we do that. And think about it. When the budget comes out, whatever we do, even if we reduce, let's say it's staff, even if that's what the council voted for, I don't think I would, but even if that's what they're voting for, you're still going to be above the 4%. It's still a big number. And now you're going to ask everybody to have a big number and accept that their services are cut. I don't see that. I do want to hear everything Mark's asking for. I want to hear you talk about it just so it can be out on the table. But I'd like your recommendations on that. And, I do think our community recognizes this. And when you tell them of the 6.8%, how much is the schools? they'll see it, right?
They're very wishful thinking there. You know, it's funny, in regard to what you're saying about the schools, we did vote on it, the community supports it. Ray New and I were at the meeting on, whatever day, Thursday, talking about Main Street, and there were quite a few people there, I'm gonna guess 50, maybe? Okay.
Yeah.
Probably mostly merchants, I'm guessing. When it came time to discuss burying the power lines, you correct me if you think I'm misinterpreting, overwhelmingly, they said, don't do it on the cheap, right? Somebody said that. Somebody said, if we're doing it, do it right. A few people said that. There was applause at that. And there was applause at burying the power lines, which people have told us about. I don't know, again, if it's feasible, but, you know, if it is.
Well, it's just like the deferred
It-
investment piece, right?
Right,
So-
exactly.
And they understood, all they were saying was, we know this is a 1 in a 30 or 40-year project. Let's just make sure we do it right and do it the way we want. Even if it costs us a little more than the 6 million, the town should support it. But what happens, and I agree with you, and that's exactly how it was portrayed. The problem is we're a small town. No one wants to hear that, 14,000 people. There's only so many people who can bear the cost of that. So if you do that, we could make that argument with almost everything, right?
Well, I don't know if it's
Our
feasible. I'm
side
just saying that's what,
programs,
that's what
our
we
system.
heard. That's
Yeah.
what we heard. Just like we heard, you know, about the schools. We have people that said we should build a new high school, that wanted us to do a new high school.
Yeah.
So, but I think it's unrealistic to expect taxpayers not to complain that their taxes are going to go up $800, $1,000.
Right.
Even though I'm telling people that they are. And we are getting stuff for it, and it's a very exciting time here with all the stuff that's going on. But people are complaining about, you know, life in general right now.
I also think that, so nobody could have anticipated the chaos that the economy has been in.
Could have anticipated.
I mean, I know the additional tariffs, I mean, obviously, we just heard that the steel tariffs are sort of iffy and, you know, fuel costs on top of everything. I think that, and just the economic sort of uncertainty has definitely affected.
I think
A lot.
even with all that, this is exactly what we had hoped for. We're landing this plane right where we want
Yeah,
to.
no.
Like
I-
everything, it's all green lights,
Right.
and this is not unexpected. The one piece that is unexpected, the delay in getting the proposal to us meant that PAYGO had dried up at the state.
Yeah,
level.
no, that's true.
And if we had PAYGO right now, it would change these numbers significantly. We wouldn't be having these conversations. Let's not forget that while we have to pay in advance now, we will start getting very significant dollars later. Right?
Correct me if I'm wrong, we're not going to get any money till the whole project is done.
Substantial
About
completion.
75% of the
Right.
project.
So
2029.
even when the high school is done, and that's going to be done first,
Yep.
But
parse
Put
them.
all together.
won't get that money.
Submitted
Remember that,
together.
Karen,
Right.
if we had
That's what I
parsed
thought.
them, right,
Right.
what happens is then you don't get the newer and fewer for
Right,
all of
right,
it, and you don't
right.
get if you do the energy efficiency there, it doesn't count over there, and then, so we had to lump it together as one project to get all the bonuses for all of them.
May I ask what our collection rate is? Is it holding steady or is it starting?
Yeah,
It
yeah.
is holding steady? Okay.
It's over, it's over 98.
No, I was like, usually that's the first indication. There's a
What do you
problem.
knock
And
on
I did
people?
bump it up in this budget, so I'm up to 98.25.
Ooh.
What do you knock on people's doors and?
So Andy, when we talked about the budget presentation you made, we were talking about under future considerations, all the projects that we have going on for a small town, how many amazing things we're doing.
Significant.
For a
Yeah.
small place, we have so many enhancing projects that are going on now for our town. And it really is an exciting time. But one of the reasons we've been successful and able to accomplish so much as far as grants, waterfront, parks, park service, recreation, other building that we're doing in town, Academy Field, Eldridge, there's many, many things going on, is because this is a council that is very deliberative. And every time we do a budget, we put it through the mill. We take our budgets, we go over them, we beat them up, we argue, and we come and we land it in a really good place. So I'm just asking for us to do our due diligence, get our department heads here, look at the proposals, and we see that this is what you would have to sacrifice if you wanted to reduce this more. And then we have a discussion. But I think this is will be our 8th budget, and we've landed 7 really good budgets. So I'm just saying, let's stick to what we do well and continue our success. So I'm just concerned about vulnerability. When you have high debt, it enhances your vulnerability. So I really want to do a belt and suspenders, look it over, kick the tires, whatever metaphor you want to use. And then we'll come up with the best budget possible.
I think I agree with you 100%, Mark. I think we've been aggressively opportunistic. We have looked to knock off that list any way we possibly could, and we have sought out great opportunities. We brought in great people to help us get to where we wanted to be. And so we may need to and it may be more subtle of a pullback from that. You still want to be opportunistic when you can, but if there's going to be a constriction or a concern for at least a couple of years while this debt is impactful, as we knew that was coming, then maybe that's something we have to do, is maybe work to clean up the multitude of projects that we already have going on and be incredibly strategic unless we're partnering with somebody who's basically footing the bill on an initiative. I know Al just picked up another grant in planning for, I think it was 115,000 on a study and some technical engineering work of the whole parking area, resiliency look, environmental look at the parking area over at 111 Pier in terms of water and stormwater control. So there's things like that that really won't cost us anything. So we still want to be able to go after those dollars to set the table for future projects. But we've been very fortunate the past 4 or 5 years in terms of the incredible success we've had in securing outside funding. That is really not what's driving this conversation tonight. It's really just our planned and strategic investment that we're making of a large scale. And that's so.
We're not having a 6.8 proposed tax increase because our operating budget's increasing.
No,
6.8%.
that's correct. That's right.
It's because we're buying something really nice.
But I do want to see, if we do, I would like to see what, at those different levels, I'd like to see what's going to be cut, what departments are affected. I just want to see that. I think that it's appropriate to say to people, this is what affected by. This is not something that we are doing out of maliciousness.
What I have left in the presentation is just general information. I can stop right here and we can pick it up on May 11th. It was a kind of a nice cap.
I think you
Mark.
just have a few more slides, don't you?
Yeah, just
If
a
you want to just
handful
finish
of
the
very
slide deck?
generic
Sure.
slides, yeah, that I can run through. This is on the operating transfers, just so you're comfortable with where the funding is being transferred. So you've got school department, debt service fund, and the library. The slide after that is just looking at the capital investment, the $150 million bond, and how that's broken out by all of the different project elements. And the budget impact, as noted, by the 5.2 million in interest costs.
Andy, did you break that out in terms of the 6.8? If you look at the school debt and what we fronted, I guess, all of it, the cost for the whole school budget, what percentage that is? If you didn't, could you? Could you?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no problem. Yeah, I mean, I know I did, before we walked in, I took total debt, new debt for 27. Some of it, a little bit of it's town, most of it's school construction. And if we just eliminated that from the tax impact calculation, it drops the 6.88 to about 4.2.
Right.
So it gets it back down to a reason. But again, that's a little bit of new town debt that we just added, plus school construction. That'll be worse in 28 versus 27. But it is what is really driving the conversation is the new debt, just to confirm that. But we'll go over those numbers ad nauseam, Mike, just to make sure that everybody has them. Next one's about fund structure. Next page just breaks down and gives you some perspective kind of numerically on general fund, unrestricted school fund, debt service fund, special revenue funds, what they're for, enterprise fund, as well as capital project funds. Next page talks about key financial policies and targets, talks about our fund balance target. I added that last sentence. We've been carrying the 10 to 17%, but Trish and I just had a call with S&P regarding, I mentioned it to the council, found a small number of small municipal debt issuances that we just incurred, and it was strong. You know, it was a strong midterm review, but you know, I think we're still continuing to hear that the days of 10 and 15% have now really become the ideal 20% plus of a fund balance reserve. So, you know, we're still in the 13, closing in on 14%. So we still have several $1,000,000 to go. We're kind of lagging behind just a bit in that respect. Got the budget variance benchmarks. You've got debt service limits based on some of the things we talk about anytime we issue debt. Questions always come up regarding, you know, as a percent of expenditures or on the net debt per capita. We've got capital projects. Our tax collection rate, as Trish just noted, a little over 98%. You know, and that fluctuates for a lot of reasons. You know, in an economy like we're in right now, it's not favorable for high tax collection. So hopefully things will be mitigated here fairly soon. Next page, I think, is that it? Be the last page. Yeah. So, and we'll, these principles, I just hit those at a very high level. You know, once we dig into the details, that's why we include so much narrative up front on our approach, because as we look back over time, every council has a different approach. Try to memorialize kind of what we're generally, how we engage, different opportunities we're looking at, challenges are, and you know, nobody likes to admit their challenges, so we try to admit them freely as to what they. That's why we include so much narrative.
I'm curious, how are other towns similar to us? Are we all in the same boat? Are we?
Not all of us.
No.
No, it depends. I think a lot of it based on aid. I think it was the analogy.
Yeah.
Some community, maybe Providence, was looking at no tax increase this year. How can they possibly do that?
Yeah.
Hundreds of millions in subsidies
Right.
of any number of different kinds of programs. So that, I mean, we are at a point where we're a small town. We're one of the few, when you look at the list of tax rates, typically it's very small communities who have no service. High valued property have the absolute lowest tax rates, $4 and $5 in the state. We are a small town with high property values, but we have larger school system, quality services, a high quality of life here, supporting systems and services. So,
And virtually no commercial base.
all commercial base, so our residential, so our services are, our expectations are high. Most of it's more property owners, right? Actually, Karen, at that same meeting, what did we hear from businesses? Absolutely felt it should be the town
Yes.
picks up
The town.
all
What?
the services.
all the-
We should pay for all the
Right,
services.
right,
It wasn't a
right.
joint effort. It was
Right.
down to, so that, again, that's another advocacy group. So we have to
Right.
engage the businesses. That was a narrative.
Right.
Clear.
Yeah, we heard that too.
They suggest a Main Street surcharge in the businesses to bury the lines or not?
Nobody brought that.
Ask, can we look at some of our discounts for like, you know, veterans or widows of veterans or, you know, people 65 and I don't know how that works. I mean, like usually it's 65 and then 70 and 75, you get can we look at that?
Ouch.
You know,
Can we look at that
we
for
can.
the, I mean, cause I don't know, have we changed it recently? Have we increased or?
So here's the question. So if we look at that,
Uh-oh.
so so basically this budget is maxed out, right? So we're at
Yeah.
the 4% state limit. Maxed out. And Trish and I are verifying this with maxed out our exception to the 4%. So if you make modifications and
Cut revenue.
Use
But
revenue.
Yeah.
that means we have to just be, I'm just letting you know,
Yeah.
not a problem. And I think we
I'm
should review
just
them. at some
looking at that, I'm like, you know, we have a veterans and widow exemption. We have a, you know, 100% service disabled veteran, you know, you get $300. It's not very much, honestly. I mean, I don't know what the other ones, you know, are, or 65 and older. You know, I think it would be nice to look at those as, you know, this, I just think it would be a good idea.
I just want, if you want to tie that.
I know, I understand, and then it's
Yeah,
gonna
we can
go.
do that.
Yeah.
Just it will have ramifications, that's
Right.
all.
Yeah, no, I get it. It would be a good idea. Maybe we should, after this, we can start looking around in that. Yeah, I think it would be helpful.
So with everybody here, we're happy to answer any other generalized questions you might have.
Okay.
I'll push out a schedule to the council regarding who you're going to hear. I will run through some additional. Start to prepare them for that.
Other questions for the manager?
No, we've already had a lot of questions and we'll have more, but tonight I'm good.
So to confirm for next week, what time are we starting? Lee, do you know, are we at 6 or 7?
O'clock in the
Or
afternoon.
we're at 7 because there's the governor's, is that the day that he's going to be at New England Institute of Technology?
The 11th. At the
We'll be
7
at
o'clock.
7 o'clock.
Mark, that's a great question because the tentative schedule going forward, and I know the council still has to make some decisions. Still a meeting on the 11th,
And what time is that one? In the 11th?
7 o'clock start, yep. And then you've got May 18th is a question. So that normally would have been another budget work session, although that is the same night at 6 PM at Swift. for the
comp
first
plan.
comp plan public meeting. So should the council decide that you think that's more important for administration and council to have a presence at, we can skip the 18th meeting and go to the comp plan meeting. Then you roll into Tuesday, the 26th, day after Memorial Day, regular meeting plus budget work session. So by the end of that meeting, we would finish all the departments. And then you've got an open day on June 1st, but I think but that's an open day. And then you've got the 8th, or we have any other day that if you wanted to plan, if you felt it was necessary and wanted to look at some other scenarios. So those are the general dates we have so far for possible budget discussions in the coming weeks.
Yeah, if we need to, we'll add an extra day in June at some point.
Do we want to make a decision now about this?
I'd like to go to the comp plan thing, actually. I'd prefer to do that, quite honestly, the 18th.
And it's the budget crunch, and if we turn the 18th into go to we cancel it?
I think that's a very important meeting based on the process. that
Yeah,
we're
I mean,
involved
we
in.
can, yeah, I think so. The other question is we could consider doing the 19th, depending how next week goes, how much progress we make. We would have the planning.
It's down on the 26th too, the day after Memorial Day. I
Right.
don't know if that's.
Yes,
That's
that's a
correct.
regular meeting. Yeah.
Okay.
But we could do a special meeting on the 19th if we need to. And see how next week goes, how far we get, how we're feeling about that at that time. I just would rather front load it a bit so we are not pushed too
Right.
close to a deadline.
Do the night.
So are we going to make a decision to move the 18th?
I think so. I think several councilors had mentioned they'd like to move the 18th. I would also
What time does
support
that?
that.
And that was just tentative, so there's no action needed by the council.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And Andy, what time does that start at Swift? Time's a meeting on the 6th.
6,
The
26th is at 6.
but the 18th is
18th.
the comp.
6
plan.
o'clock. 6 o'clock
Swift.
at Swift.
Okay,
Yeah.
thanks.
Okay, and we'll, as far as the 19th, are people available on the 19th if we need that?
I'm free on the 19th.
People here on the 26th?
And yeah, I've already been,
I've already had. the
cleared with
26th
you.
down.
How about June 1st? People available on that day if possible? Okay, so we've got a few
Yeah.
days that we can
Yeah, I
use
can do
as
it.
flexible days. Those would be both special meetings, the 1st and the 19th. Okay, so Andy, at the next meeting, are you going to be prepared to run some alternate scenarios, or do you want to get more feedback after the department directors are?
We circle back with you and see if we're prepared to do that at that
Mhm.
time. I don't see any reason why not, but I think the deeper we go, the more difficult it gets.
Yeah,
So,
I don't
yeah.
think there's much interest in going too many layers down.
You don't anticipate at that meeting going through the different, having Trish, all the different tax rates and all, that's
No,
the last one.
Agreed. Yes.
Once we decide what we're going to spend, then we'll decide how to allocate it.
Okay, other questions? Thank you. I think you covered a lot of ground tonight. I have to say that the budget booklet that was put out this year, it gets better each year. And it's really a reference work. If there's any component of East Greenwich that you want to know about, there's something in there, a chapter in there. So it's quite comprehensive. Very, very much appreciated.
Bedtime reading. Spending.
Well, if there's no further questions, then I think we'll close this item on our agenda and ask for a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion is second. All those in favor? Motion carries 4-0. Thank you.